1-844-500-4242. That's the toll-free number of the Howie Carr Show. Joining us now, as she does every week, sometimes on Monday, sometimes on Tuesday, Ann Coulter, the best-selling author of In Trump We Trust. And Ann, thanks for being with us here on the Howie Carr Show.
Absolutely. I couldn't miss you this week, Howie.
So you weren't
every week.
You weren't that.
Sorry, go ahead.
You weren't that broken up by the pulling of the Obamacare repeal bill. I got that impression last week.
Good grief! I can't believe these. I try to be polite about Republicans, Howie, but they're getting me a little fed up. This is really starting to look like, through no fault of Trump's, but the agenda has been the Bush agenda, the Jeb Bush agenda, corporate tax cuts, and what was their big reform to Obamacare? Eliminating the taxes, and still can't buy health insurance. They will do nothing for those of us desperate to buy a real health insurance plan. But don't worry, we got rid of those corporate tax hikes under Obamacare.
Right.
I just don't understand why we're the only people who seem to understand the free market, and these Republicans don't. And as I've said before, what is it they are doing? Trump has been a whirlwind of activity. He's remade the Republican Party as a party for all Americans, for the working class and the middle class, not just the Wall Street and the big donors. No, those are the Democrats' constituents, not just the poverty-stricken and the welfare recipients, but for regular Americans. And we don't seem to be getting to any of that stuff. I just read right before calling into you, The Hill has an article with this Senate saying, yeah, we're not going to get to funding the wall, which luckily Trump doesn't need the Senate for. The Constitution makes him commander-in-chief. It is his duty and responsibility to protect the borders of America. And, boy, he sure knows how to use eminent domain and get stuff built, so he doesn't need them. But what on earth did the Republicans learn nothing?
Well, why did he appoint Mitch McConnell's wife to a big, cushy job as a cabinet secretary if Mitch McConnell is not going to return the favor to him,
Oh, you're absolutely right. He should fire her.
I mean, really, seriously, why do you, what's up with Mitch McConnell? I mean, doesn't he understand that he has to, he didn't really have that much, he's not really an electoral dynamo. I mean, Rand Paul is more popular than him. Matt Bevin, the governor, is more popular than Mitch McConnell, I mean, Mitch McConnell should be happy that he's got a Republican president who's so popular in his home state. He should be helping him out, but they don't care. And I just see Rob Portman is on one of the news channels talking about it. Say, and of course, he's one of these guys who said he wasn't going to vote for the repeal to begin with. They want to keep the Medicaid bucks going. It's in Ohio because of that idiot Kasich. The governor took the money. It's like taking free heroin. And then you get hooked, and suddenly you have to start paying for it. It's ridiculous. I don't know what the hell they were thinking of.
I know. They seem to have missed the entire 2016 election. And, I mean, one problem is going to be caused by this. There are going to be a lot of Trump Republicans primarying these useless incumbent Republicans. And on one hand, obviously, I'd love to replace 98% of them. There are a few good ones. Lou Barletta, for example, is fantastic from Pennsylvania. So there are a few Trumpian Republicans in the Congress. I don't want to make this too sweeping, but it's pretty sweeping. Maybe 90% should go. On the other hand, we don't want to lose a Republican majority, as pointless as that may seem at times. It is better than Democrats. So Republicans are going to have to be careful picking and choosing the right Trumpian Republicans to replace these useless slogs with.
Yeah, I got to ask you, we too spent the first hour talking about the feel-good story of the day, the shootout, or the one-sided shootout in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Wasn't that a great story?
Yes! That is the feel-good story of the day. I just read that story over and over again.
Yeah, I keep going back to it, Ann, waiting for more details. Everybody wants the names of the perps. What kind of ammo was the kid using in his gun? You know, how far down the driveway did the one get before he collapsed? You know, the other two were lying dead in the garage or just inside the mudroom. It's just a great story, and I'm so happy.
It also gives me a reason to actually buy an AR 14 or 15 because they're really fun to shoot. I shoot them generally when I go to a firing range because they're so fun. But I always thought, I don't really need a gun like this for home protection. But the advantage is you get them all with one shot.
Right, 3 on 1, Ann. That's the thing. I mean,
know.
They were
arms too.
Yeah, and they're wearing masks. I mean, it's not like, and you know, the thing is, you could always say, well, he had a throwdown. He threw down a knife. No one has 3 black masks. Okay, for throwdowns. These guys were obviously in there for business, and there's no getting around it. You know, there's not one of these things they were only looking to, you know, siphon some gas or anything like that, so they could move on to the drug dealers.
I'm with you. I want the names. I'm really against this business of not releasing the names of minors. No, I'm sorry. You've given up your right to privacy when you bust into a private home with a gun and a mask on, and I want to know their names. I did notice that the getaway driver was Elizabeth Rodriguez?
Maria, I think. Yeah. She's
okay.
I don't know. I mean, I don't care what ethnic group they were. I'm glad they went down. Listen, Devin Nunes, you're standing up for him, aren't you? I mean, this is another guy. They're trying to railroad this guy. He's just trying to do his job.
No, I just tweeted out, all of the left has become like little Keith Olbermanns, constantly demanding that this or that person around Trump be fired. We had to cycle through Steve Bannon. We had to cycle through Stephen Miller, cycle through Ivanka and Jared Kushner. And, okay, it's Nunes's turn this week. They'll tire themselves out, collapse, and move on to someone else who seems to be slightly friendly to. I mean, they did it to Jimmy Fallon, of all people, because he didn't, I don't know, just start Tourettesing at Donald Trump, as opposed to, remember when he mussed his hair and the entertainment community lashed out at Jimmy Fallon just for doing what he does, put on a funny show.
Yeah. How about the fact that all these Trump associates are now volunteering, including Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, are volunteering to come before these congressional committees investigating this so-called Russian collusion. I mean, whereas Hillary Clinton's aides, I mean, like Cheryl Mills, she First, she wanted an immunity deal, which was negotiated by David Gregory's wife. Then she gets them to not use her computer, any evidence on the computer against her. Then she claims that she has an attorney-client privilege with Hillary Clinton, even though she hasn't practiced law in 10 or 15 years. I mean, she's protecting, she's stonewalling in 3-4 different directions, and nobody ever says boo about it. But they're still trying to make a story out of this thin air of the Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. Where is the evidence, Ann? At some point, don't they have to come up with evidence?
With something, yes. No, you're absolutely right. Let's get back to the evidence on the Russian thing in just a second, because I want to talk about the first thing you said, all of these people around Trump volunteering to go in and testify. I was just thinking about this. My absolute favorite of them is Roger Stone. If you are not familiar with Stone, he is brilliant, but a little bit crazy. He will show up with like a cape and a top hat. This will be the funnest day of his life. It will be like the ransom of Red Chief when they bring in
We have the sound cut.
Stone.
We have the sound cut from Sunday. This was a pretty funny sound cut from Roger Stone.
That the gentleman from California, who's largely full of shit.
Okay, you see what I'm talking about. Yeah, he's gone on these Twitter rants against particular reporters, just cursing up a blue streak. He's hilarious. It'll be the funnest day to watch a congressional hearing. I don't know, probably in our lives. It'll be fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that. As for this Russian collusion business, okay, we now know Comey's been investigating the apocryphal collusion. He said since July. That
8
was
months.
the only interesting thing that came out in his testimony. You've been investigating since July, and you've got nothing. That intelligence report, if I may have said this before, but it is worth saying again, that intelligence report that was put out at the end of January, early February, all serious people to look at that, including hysterical never-Trumpers. This woman, I thought it was a man, but it's a woman, Masha Gessen, I think her name is. She writes for the New York Review of Books. I've tweeted that out a few times. And she went through when she said, okay, there's like, the cover page, the filler pages, the table of contents. We end up getting down to about 5 pages of actual content. And in the content, there is not one iota of evidence. It's just more conclusions. Same thing was said by, again, a total lefty, Matt Taibbi at Rolling Stone magazine. I believe originally that's what David Ignatius at the Washington Post said. And yesterday I tweeted out an article from the Miami Herald with all of these outside computer experts saying what they're citing as the evidence of Russia, the fingerprints left behind. No, the first time it's used, it's coming from Russia, but these aren't like bombs. They don't blow up when they're sent out into the world. Now everyone has those. Anyone could have left those fingerprints behind. So there's not only no evidence, but an increasing amount of evidence contrary to this alleged collusion. But at the New York Times has gotten crazier than Salon magazine. It is it's taken as a fact. Okay, we start with, we know the Trump campaign was colluding with Russia. Now let's look at it. No, we don't know that. It's madness.
Right. I get these callers, every once in a while, these seminar callers, they say, we need an investigation. I say, an investigation of what? And then they start stuttering. There's nothing there, and they don't know what to say. They just keep demanding this investigation, and I think a lot of the people that are in arms about this, I don't think they're reading the stories other than the headline. How about the New York Times? There's no evidence that Trump was wiretapped. How about the front page of your own damn newspaper said there was wiretapped data? And then they say, well, we didn't mean wiretap data, even though we had it on the front page. And on Inauguration Day, it's at the top it's the lead story, wiretapped data. And then now they're saying there's no wiretapped data. Which is it?
Also, the results of those investigations have been printed in the New York Times and the Washington Post. So, yes, we know there was surveillance going on. What they are hanging their hat on, which I think a lot of people don't understand because it's so juvenile and stupid, is Trump used the word wiretap, not use surveillance techniques against. And how many times does he have to explain? I was using that as a metaphor. I put it in quotes one time. I didn't literally mean there are wires here. Everyone understands that. I was just thinking about it. Do you even know what a transom is? And yet we all use the expression, well, this just came across the transom. I have no idea what it is. That isn't a literal statement. When the Washington Post or the New York Times reports, the White House said today, we ought to spend 6 months saying, what do you mean White House? The White House doesn't talk. You don't literally mean the White House. What do you mean? That is what they are doing with this wiretap versus surveil. We know the Trump transition team was surveilled. We don't know which people and who specifically ordered it, when Obama found out about it, how widely that information was
How about this thing, Ann? I got to wrap this up, but I just got to get this. This is from RT. This is one of the Russian news sites. This is the lead on it, the story today. The U.S.'s ABM sites in Europe and on warships patrolling Russia's borders are creating the potential for America to launch an overwhelming surprise nuclear strike on Russia, the Russian General Staff said. Wait a second. I thought Donald Trump was in bed with these guys, and the Russian newspaper is saying they're worried about there's going to be a first strike, a preemptive nuclear strike by Trump. What I mean, again, none of this, none of the Democrats' scenarios stand up under any kind of scrutiny.
It really shows you that Trump is right. This is a major problem for a democracy to have fake news like this. And let's also, just one little point overall. If I mean, Russia isn't a country we want to live under. It's corrupt. It's not as corrupt as many other governments that are our allies. But still, who do you want to deal with as president of the United States, the most powerful country in the world? And a completely viable, corrupt politician like Hillary Clinton, whom you got the uranium deal from?
Right.
Or a businessman? I mean, yeah, maybe we can find mutual interests. I hope we can in fighting radical Islam. But no, a corrupt politician is much better for a corrupt government.
Exactly. They keep calling Putin a gang. That's the last thing I'll say. They keep calling Putin a gangster. I always thought gangsters want to deal with corrupt politicians because a corrupt politician, you can buy him off. I mean, the Clintons are the most viable politicians probably in American, if not human history. You know, I would if I were a gangster, a small level or a Putin gangster, I would not want to do business with anybody but the Clintons. The only question for the Clintons is how much. That's it.
Absolutely.
How
right.
much? Ann Coulter, what's the name of your book that people should buy? Tell us.
In Trump we trust, e pluribus awesome.
Thank you, Ann. Speak to you next week. Thanks for being on the show. I'm Howie Carr.
Don't move. Howie Carr is back next.